All right, good morning, everyone. Sorry about the late start here. Let's kick it off. Okay. Um, we had a bit of a wild session last night's U.S. markets. You can see there that we really sold off um, pretty hard into not pretty hard, but we really sold off into the the end of the session, and then last hour and a half, we really just drifted back up to the day. I think it was really clear cut what was happening overnight, and that's that the stocks that have, the hot stocks that we've been talking about, the Googles and the Teslas and the Facebooks and the all the hot stocks, momentum stocks of the world, all took a real beating yesterday ahead of today's non-farm payroll numbers, and the rest of the market actually held up pretty well. So it's kind of the same sort of theme. We managed to see it almost every other day now for about 6 or 7 trading days, and last night was another perfect example where everything else held just fine. I think the Dow was actually actually up a scrap on the day. The Nasdaq was down close to 1%, and the S&P was also only down a scrap. So I think really interesting what we're seeing there. The fact that what had been market leaders are starting to diverge, I think, is very interesting. Okay, moving on to the Asian session, you can see totally mixed. Obviously, China actually managed to trade up on the day. You also had Australia, which is trading up on the day, probably simply because Australia, was very, very much affected by what happens in China. But you've got the Hang Seng and the Kospi and the Nikkei all lagging a little bit. Either side of it, there's no significant moves, so really just sideways action for the most part in the Asian session. We did have some comments yesterday coming out of the PPOC in China saying that that they're going to continue to keep monetary policy conservative, which really just further put the nail in the coffin, I think, after yesterday's little mini stimulus program, that they're not probably going to cut rates, and they're probably not going to do anything to cut the reserve requirements for the banks there, et cetera. So I think, personally, I think it was a little bit light on the stimulus from what the markets were expecting, and I think that the shares kind of told us that a little bit to an extent yesterday. All right, we got a lot of shares that are going ex-div on Monday. That's WBOs, BVTs, SBKs, SLMs, CXX, SOLs, and REMs. So just keep that in mind. There's a few big divvies there. Bidvest, Standard Bank, Sanlam in particular is actually a monster div. I think Zara is quite a big div as well. So and Cecil at $8. So keep that in mind. Make maybe a little bit of a push in some of those shares today, trying to strip the divvy. All right. Get into it. This morning we had German factory orders that came in soft. We have Halifax house prices that are coming out in the UK at the open. We've got PMI numbers in the entire European region. We also have unemployment rate out in the States and the Big Daddy, which is going to be non-farm payroll. So I think continue to see a little bit of sideways action, maybe into the close of the day. Into the non-farm payroll numbers this afternoon. All right, I'm going to keep it short and sweet on the maps today. There's a few things that were happening yesterday at the end of the close. It really turned there at the end. At a point, it was looking as if markets were totally unhappy with Chinese stimulus. And you really saw a sell-off start to come in the Aussie. You can see here at the end of the day, I'll actually just pop back into a bit of a 2-day session. You can see here how we really reversed here into the end of the day. This morning, you can see we're bouncing up a little bit, but we had quite a big reverse there into the close of yesterday's session. And then and then we found some sort of stability and really actually buoyed some of the shares at the end of the day. If you look at Billiton's and the way Billiton's really spiked at the death, and it continued to spike into the the end of the session there in London. We got the same sort of thing happening kind of across the board, and some of those shares really looked like they were, a lot of especially the mining stocks were starting to fail, and then they ended up just finding some sort of support maybe an hour into the U.S. session. So I think it's going to be really important to monitor that today. The first one of those I think that we're going to need to look at is Kumba. You can see yesterday, sorry, let me just go back to that. You can see yesterday how we came up here to this 285 level, which we know how significant this is, and basically fought at 285 the whole day. There was a couple little small pop-ups above that with very little volume trading up there. Bottom line is we fought hard at 285 the whole day. The importance of this level, I think, is quite obvious. This is where we broke down from in the most recent that most recent violent drop that we had, and we really technically we just look like we're flagging up to the 285 level, and I think potentially if we drop about 276, 275, or sorry, 376 or 375, that we would really be dropping out the bottom of this flag pattern, and could set us up for lower prices. If we don't pop above 385 today, I think it's really bearish. Especially because of the Chinese stimulus program and announced the rail program, etc. That should be very beneficial for iron ore if it can't rally on that news. If it can't push through this 385 level on that news, then I think markets will eventually take it lower and take it lower hard. All right, MTN is really at a major inflection point at the moment. Obviously we keep coming up and testing. You can see there at 320 how many times. Let me just zoom in a little bit on this. You can see how many times we tested 320 over the past 3 days out of the past 5 days. Sorry, in fact that looks like 4 days out of the past 5 days. No, sorry, just 3. And which is the previous highs. Yesterday at the death, we really were selling hard, and we traded down to 215, which in my mind kind of dropped us below support here. We closed up a rand in the auction, and we're gonna have to see how this plays out this morning. But this thing's really showing us some consolidation here between about 215 and 220. It's really actually even been between 215 and maybe 219. But the second that we move out of that range, we either get above 220 or drop below 215. I think that we could have a nice move in MTN one way or another. On the back of that, Vodacom yesterday broke above its previous all-time closing high, so we made a new all-time closing high in Vodacom. And this thing's just been absolutely on fire. We had a huge day out of it yesterday, really with MTN lagging. So obviously possibly on some of the deal talks there with Niatel and everything else. But bottom line is we popped out to the top of Vodacom yesterday, and it looks, this is, to me, it really shapes up to be a bit of a continuation pattern, and the target here is very big. We'd be looking up close to all the way to 150 on a proper breakout here. So just keep that in mind. I mean, this thing gathers a little bit of steam going through that level. It could really take off. All right, and the last one I'm gonna show is Discovery. Discovery really kind of just popped through as of yesterday's session. You can see here this level around $85, which is where we topped out in October, and we also topped out at the end of December. You can see we finally ripped back through that. We also moved up through the 200-day moving average, and it's all happening really out of a bit of a slanted inverse head and shoulder pattern here. I know that's a little bit rough, but there, the left shoulder, the right shoulder, and the head here. So, that's going to really give us a target probably of about a good 10 to $12 on the breakout here, which the breakout really happened above 79. So we're going to be looking at target probably to 89, 90, somewhere up in there. which really takes us back to that a little bit of consolidation that we saw back in September. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a move up to that level, or even back closer to the highs in Discovery, the way that it started to trade lately. And that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot.